Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind a beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Now, Kieran, normally at this stage of an interview show, we have a little chuckle to ourselves. We have a little joke because the audience had clocked long ago, probably long before we realised they did clock it, that we record these immediately after the pod. We say, "How have you been?" And it turns out I saw you 3 seconds ago. But this time, there has been actually a couple of days between recording the interview and recording the last pod. So, how have you been, Kieran?
I've been marking exams. So as you can imagine, this is a very welcome distraction. And in fact, I can get Jehovah's Witnesses coming to the door, and I'll engage them in conversation. Such is the tedium of marking exams. But all has to be done, part of the job, and I'm very fortunate to at least have so many students who really invest in what they're doing, because I teach football finance and they seem to love the subject, rightly or wrongly.
Yeah, see, never take what you do for granted, Kieran, because we've had this discussion for £1 a pop. I'll mark some of them for you, Kieran. I'll get close on a couple, but just bear in mind all those anxious young people thinking to themselves, I wonder if Mr. Maguire's reading my exam right now, and hoping that you take kindly to their stuff, Kieran. So it's an important thing you do. So don't put yourself down, Kieran. And this interview, Kieran, was it's a catch-up, actually, with George Pavlou, who's the co-founder of NUFAN and the new football club, or relatively new football club, AFC Crewe. We spoke to George in March last year. We thought it was time to find out what was happening both to NUFAN and to the club, and started by asking him to remind us of what NUFAN actually was.
We set it up in the aftermath of the Super League. Me and a few friends were very frustrated with the direction of travel for top end of football. So we set it up. It's a simple concept. We have bought a club. Anybody can essentially subscribe. We have 2 tiers of membership, silver and gold. It's all very affordable, $3.99 and $8.99 a month. That essentially gives you access to a Discord server, which is where we run the club. Everything is voted on. If money needs to be spent, then we vote on that. That's the very simple concept of the club, and that's how it works.
And does everyone vote, George? Remind me, or do you set up committees for various different things?
Yeah, so we've got teams that work on all different parts of the club. So we'll have a team that work on some of the marketing that we try and do. We've got a team that will work on operations, so things like booking training pitches and things like that. We've got obviously a finance team, because that we have to be super transparent with that. It's impossible not to be, when you can't sit there and say you're a community club and that you're using money wisely if you're not telling people what you're using it for. And obviously people are voting on it, so we have to. So we have these like sub teams within the whole community, but yeah, essentially anybody can join and sort of get as involved or as not involved as they like.
And it's not a charity, is it?
No, we're set up as a cooperative. We're actually in the middle of sorting out with the cooperative, I can't remember what they're called, exactly how it works, because they were like, oh, hold on, if you've got 2 tiers, then we need to slightly change the definition, as it were, which is fine. It's not an issue, obviously, but so we're set up as a cooperative. Everybody has 1 share in the club. They're not worth a monetary amount, as it were. Your subscription is tied to the share.
So just before we talk about the club and how it's going, George, could you just be absolutely clear on 2 points about the membership models? First of all, so members vote on everything. So if you're getting a new pie supplier or a new centre forward, it all goes to a vote.
Not the playing side. So the playing side is where we draw the line. Obviously, appointing managers and managers' expenses and things like that, yes, we will vote on. we will vote on playing budget. So how much can we pay people's expenses, as a club, looking at the income and how much is going out and all the rest of it. That we can vote on, but it was put in place quite early that basically no manager would want to come if you've got people voting on starting 11s and people voting on whether they're allowed to sign a centre forward or not. We're not at the level yet where that's a problem, because obviously grassroots football, people can be dual registered, people come in and out all the time, all sorts of things happen at grassroots level that it would become chaos if that constantly had to be voted on. For the playing side, we leave to the manager. Anything from manager up is what is voted on.
Well, we'll come to the manager shortly because you've got a cracker. But the final question on the actual concept. You mentioned the 2-tier membership costs. So what's the difference between silver and gold? If I was to sign up for silver and Kieran for gold, what would we be getting different?
You get all the same accesses. Silver, you get one vote when we vote on things. Gold gives you an extra vote, basically. So your vote is worth 2. But what we've found generally, and we've done a lot of analysis on this, is because we're just interested, is that the double gold vote hasn't swayed many of the votes overall, which is quite interesting. So people would have voted. People seem to vote together in blocks quite a lot, which is, I guess, testament to the debate that we have before we actually put a vote out.
Yeah, I'd quite like to bring Kieran in on that, because it seems to me, Kieran, that if the double vote, the gold membership, isn't actually swaying that many things, you probably need to keep that quiet, don't you?
From a marketing point of view, I probably would, absolutely. I think to me, it just sounds that people like the broader concept and are willing to contribute more, with perhaps taking a broader issue that if they're aware that their contributions can help to accelerate the club's success as a footballing entity, then that's a price they're willing to pay.
Yeah, that's something that we discuss quite a lot as well, actually, because like you said, if the vote isn't affecting the running of the club, then obviously what's the incentive to pay more? But what we do have is a lot of members that do say quite a lot, like, how do I contribute more? How do I do more and stuff like that? That there are some people in there that have got their own businesses and they're doing very well in life and things like that, and they want to give more, which is fantastic. But the flip side is, it's like, well, we've had to sort of start thinking of ways that we can do that. So, for example, we've set up donations to the club, but it's not just donations to the club to end up in the bank account. We've essentially got a list of things that the donations would go towards. Our goalkeeper, for example, recently, he really, really bad injury. To his front 2 teeth have basically lodged up in his gums. It was that bad. It was gross. I got sent the picture of him in A&E and it was shocking. But yeah, so obviously we put out a message to everybody saying, look, we want to contribute to Toby getting his teeth sorted out. And obviously we got a surge of donations in, and that's ring fenced by the finance team. Anything that comes through donations, they know, okay, that's going towards a different pot. It doesn't just go into the training pot or the ops pot and stuff like that. So we are sort of like working out ways that people can contribute more if they want to, that can affect the club and help accelerate the club, from loads of different points of view, not just marketing, not just having a bigger bank balance and stuff like that.
Send him our regards. That sounds awful.
Yeah.
My cousin has just signed for Bury as a goalkeeper, and he got, when he was at Whitehawk, got a horrendous head injury, which found its way into the tabloids, which obviously made all his mates laugh, because it's a very male thing, isn't it? The more your mates are in pain, the more funny it seems to be.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how things are going for you, George. We spoke in March 2023, as I said, which was your first season as the owners of AFC Crewe. How have things gone on and off the pitch since then? And perhaps could we start by telling us what the increase in board members has been? So I think it was about 9. 150 when we last spoke. Is that's gone up? I presume.
Yeah, it was about that. So I think last time we spoke, we were in the middle of appointing our new manager for the men's team, and we were just going through the process of appointing a women's manager because we were launching a women's team as well. So since then, we've appointed Chris Stokes as the women's manager. He's been in and around Cheshire and the Northwest coaching women's football for a long time. He was really interested and attracted to the project, and he's been amazing for us since coming in, especially given the women's team, because we recruited from all over. They haven't been able to train, so they're training this season, which is great, but they weren't able to train. But Chris did an unbelievable job, and has sort of got them to third place in our first season, which was amazing. And then at the time, like I said, we were speaking to former Premier League star Gary Taylor-Fletcher. Some of the 90s, 2000s viewers might remember. No, not 90s, he wasn't that far back. 2000s, 2010. Sorry, he'll hate me for saying that now. Yeah, so we appointed Gary. He had just left a job at Nantwich, who were 4 or 5 leagues ahead of where we are. We knew we were reaching. We knew that, but again, he was super interested in the project. A lot of what he was saying to us was similar to his own career, where it started very much at the bottom and he worked his way all the way to the top, and he wants his coaching career to go that way as well. So he saw this as a great opportunity. So he joined, and the standards around the club just immediately, it was like a light switch went on, and he just raised the standard so high immediately. A lot of players that used to play for us that we were having problems with just got cut from the squad. Gary just wasn't having any issues with discipline and things like that. We had an influx of players as well. So obviously Gary's got a great network in and around grassroots football in the Northwest and stuff. So he was able to bring in a few players too. So it was a really, really exciting few months. And obviously we, as a club and as an entity, we sort of used that to promote the club. And as we did that, we saw the numbers rise and people stick more. I think when we started, it was a cool concept. It was an interesting, cool concept that people were curious about. I think, Kieran, you just mentioned it as well. Broadly interested in the concept. I think when Gary came in and then launching the women's team, and they were so good so quickly, that I think a lot of people sort of actually took notice. A lot of people that probably were maybe following us on social media, they decided, oh, actually, yeah, I'm going to take the leap. I'm going to get involved and blah, blah, blah. And since then, like I said, every time we've done a marketing push, it's been slightly bigger. Retention's been slightly better. And I think it's just all down to the fact that people can see that it's a real thing now. Success is happening on the pitch. We're being run well, as far as I'm aware, off the pitch as well. And people want to be involved with that, which is why we've been able to retain a lot more members, and we're now up at about 1,500, and that's approximately where we hover at the moment.
A few questions off the back of that, George. How do member numbers compare with attendance figures?
We get around, on a horrible Saturday or Sunday, we get 50 turning up to Wood Park where we play. On a nicer day or on a big game, we're up at about 150, 200. I think the most we've ever had in the ground was 270 odd. We did a big community day thing where we put on food and entertainment and things like that, just to get more local people down to sort of know about AFC Crewe and stuff. And that was really successful. And like I said, about just shy of 300 people turned up, which is amazing considering it was just pretty much all through Facebook ads and Facebook groups and things like that we sort of pulled it off. But yeah, I mean, a lot of our membership is global. We've got people from Greece, Netherlands, Belgium, US, so actually getting them to Wood Park is tough. But we've put a lot of focus on the local community and those of us that are close enough, making sure that when we are down there, we are talking to the locals who do turn up. We get a lot of people just from around Alsager where we play. They just want to go to watch some footy on a Saturday afternoon. So if Alsager are away somewhere, they'll come and watch us instead. It's just making sure that we speak to those people and make them feel like they want to be AFC Crewe fans and they want to turn up and watch the team. And we're lucky that we've got, a nice group of people who do create that welcoming experience for people.
The manager, as you say, he's a big name manager. I mean, you've got a big beast in local football there. There's a couple of questions I'd like to ask. Firstly, I'd like to know if he's paid. I don't want to know how much he's paid, but I'd be interested to know whether he's being paid. And secondly, you say he was interested in the project. Did he have any reservations? Did you have to sell the idea to him that board members might be setting budgets rather than him?
Yeah, he is paid. That's open knowledge. That's fine. He is. I mean, if we'd got someone of his caliber for free, I don't know what I'd do, to be honest. That would be mental. Essentially, I mean, the story goes that our co-chairman Liam, he basically met Gary in a pub in Nantwich, and they essentially had a few pints, spoke about the whole project, and got the deal done. It was very very Harry Redknapp-esque deal. He was interested in the project. I think it was, obviously, but it was like what I said earlier about we sort of ring fence the playing budget stuff. Ultimately there's a budget there. The managers can use that as they see fit, so long as they stick within it. And obviously we forecast that over a season. So if we've got a run of, big games and actually, some of the players that come from a bit further afield, we need to pay their expenses to get them there. That's not a problem. We had one lad, he was up in Scotland for a week with some family stuff. And we had a huge midweek game that he said, I can't play because I'm up with my family in Scotland. He said, if I can get a train down, I will. But we basically put it to an emergency vote. We were like, should we pay for Cole's train to get down and play the game? He came down, he scored a hat-trick, and we won it 4-1, and it was, so it's just things like that we can affect. And Gary was able to speak to the board and basically say, look, Cole's an unbelievable player. I really want him down. I think he'll make a big difference again. I think was it Leak midweek? Anyway, whoever it was. And he did. And so those things sort of just help when Gary knows that he's being backed, and when Chris knows that he's being backed. Actually, that whole I'm not in control of the quote marks, obviously they're in control of budgets, then it sort of goes away, because actually, the board know what's required. They can look at the figures, they can look at our finance updates, and they know the right decision to make.
I hope it was Leak midweek, by the way, because the fans would really enjoy saying that.
It was League Development, not League Town.
Yeah.
They're a bit.
Last time we spoke, I think you were just about to make the decision. You had certainly been debating the pros and cons of setting up a women's team. Now, obviously, you've done that now. What do you think? And presume obviously that would have been voted on by the board. What was the deciding factor in making that decision, which I think most people would agree is the right one?
We obviously, I mean, there's a couple of ways of looking at it. I suppose there's the cynical commercial look at it, right? And women's football is on the up. It is, right? Anybody who watches football can see that. My girlfriend's played football her whole life, and she can't believe the opportunities now for women's players versus when she was growing up. And she's completely right, and I think every club in the country is starting a women's team or starting a girls' team or whatever, which is great, and long may it continue. So I think from a cynical / commercial view, it makes commercial sense, right? The FA are handing out a lot of grants for women's football. We're able to generate interest and income from it as well. But the flip side was everybody was debating. We had a reserve team at the time. We had the men's first team, and we were all sitting there going like, do we start a junior section? Do we start a women's section? What's next? Because the men's will run, because men's football is absolutely ginormous in this country. So that will run. But what do we do next? And a lot of the debate, like I said, it revolved around women's football, and there were tons of people in the community that were just going like, it just makes sense to start a women's team. Why would we not? It's a sensible thing to do. So like I said, we ran the vote, and everybody voted to start a women's team over a junior section, for example. Obviously from an administrative point of view, it saved us quite a lot of obstacles or hurdles, I should say, because setting up a junior section, there's all manner of different checks and administration that needs to be done to do that safely. And I don't think we'd want to do that until we're ready to do that. But the women's side was a bit of a no-brainer for us. So we voted on it, and then a group of people that were particularly passionate about women's football within the community essentially set about, let's go find some players, let's go find a manager, and let's get it up and running.
Hi, I'm Steve Lamack, and every week I'm joined by Music Ally's Head of Insight, Stuart Dredge, on The Price of Music, the weekly podcast all about the money behind the music industry. In each episode, we discuss the very latest goings-on in the music business and dig into the finances behind the big stories.
So whether you're a music lover who just wants to know more about what really goes on in the industry, or you're an aspiring musician, manager or label owner who wants some inside knowledge on how Spotify's financial model really works, or what the future holds for independent live music venues, this is a show for you.
Subscribe to The Price of Music in your podcast app now. See you soon.
This is what I'm interested in when it comes to these type of votes. Who is it that's offering the board a choice between youth football and women's football? Or are you saying to the board, can you put up options as well to vote on?
So the process essentially goes that there is like a leadership group within the club. So we've got chairman, we've got a club secretary, we've got some people that are really, really active that have, they've set up the club shop, they've done all the insurance side of it. They do all that, there's a group of people that are really, really active all the time. So that's what we call like the team leaders. And that's just sort of a relatively well-known group within the community. So there's no issues there. What we'll always say is, right, these are the things that are on the agenda. And then we'll put an announcement out to the whole Discord, essentially to the whole community, saying these are the things that are coming up, what's particularly important to everybody. And then that goes into another chat. So we've got an ideas and suggestions chat. People can obviously put their ideas and put their suggestions in there. And then we sort of just do it on, well, what's most important to most people that are talking. So, for example, in this pre-season, a lot of people have been saying, look, we want to see the budget from last season, and then we want to see it compared against the budget to this season. So actually that got published last night. There was a load of chat about it because we're going to be voting on the playing budget. We're going to be voting on gate receipts. We're going to be voting on marketing budgets. We're going to be, all of these things that need voting on because it affects the club financially. And by extension, the success we can have on the pitch. So the process is essentially what's important to everybody, what gets the most chatter in the Discord, and then what are the options, what are the most realistic options, what are people talking about? Are people saying we should reduce the budget? Are people saying we should increase the budget? And then we essentially come up with sensible options. If once we put a vote out and people aren't happy with the options, if there's a real massive pushback, it's like, well, these options are rubbish and whatever, which I don't actually think has happened, not in that way that I've just described. I think we've had one vote where people were like, this needs to be on there as well, so we took it down and just put it back up again with the extra option. But yeah, I mean, it's mostly just democratic via the Discord. What are people talking about? What do people want to push the club on? And let's have a chat about it and see if it's sensible.
Kieran, if I could bring you back in now, I'm guessing that you would wholeheartedly approve of what George just said about budgets and fan votes, because A, there has to be 100% transparency, and B, fans get a genuine influence on what's going on. Now, leaving aside the argument as to how far up the pyramids you can get with that model, I imagine that at this stage you think it's a particularly good one, Kieran, don't you?
Yeah, it ticks off all of the things that we've been talking about governance. If you take a look at some of the clubs who are higher up the pyramid, who have what I would call sort of gold standard in terms of relationships with fan bases, and fan bases are stakeholders in the game. This is excellent, and also it makes clear to everybody that's buying into the scheme that it's all about sustainability, and there's a level of engagement. But if I've always felt, and we've said this with regards to Andy Holt, the way that he engages with the fans at Accrington, along the lines of, you might not like what we're doing, but this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing. And if you explain to people why, I honestly think it works really well.
Well, it actually comes back to what we've been talking about at Everton for 9 months. The reason fans get so upset is because Moshiri doesn't tell them anything about the situation. And if he were to say to them, this is what's happening, this is where the problems are, fans would go, fine. George, as you continue to grow, what are the biggest challenges financially? Are you, for example, profitable?
Yeah, we had a profitable season last season. The bank balance is healthy. We're okay. We're fine. Naturally, we got promoted last season, so our costs are going up. We know that. The finance team put together a really meticulous profit and loss sheet, going through all of our income streams, going through all of our costs as a club, and then obviously annualizing that, looking at it month by month, etc., etc. So people have got a super clear view of where the club is, where the club should be in 12 months' time, and then obviously we've highlighted the lines that we think these are the things that we need to talk about and debate. But even that, I actually said, when I put it out yesterday to everybody, I even said, if there are things that aren't highlighted that people feel we should be talking about more, or could be, something that we invest more in or bring down the cost of, then let us know, because this is just our idea of it, but ultimately it's a community. So I mean, the transparency thing's massive. I know Kieran just mentioned it, but the transparency thing for us is huge. We have to let people know where their money's going, what it's being spent on, what is ring fenced, what is just stuff we have to pay for, training pitches, kits, things like that. What is stuff that we can up and down, and that has a material effect. But even that, the process, I mean, the budget process, for example, we've got this one P&L now. What we're going to do is every time we have a vote, we're going to adjust it based on what people have voted on, so that the next vote, they've got an accurate view of the impact of that vote, which has put a load of work for me, a couple of the others, and the finance guys. But actually, everybody's up for it, because it's like, no, it's the best thing to do. It makes us sustainable. It means that people aren't just going, yeah, we got money, yeah, just do it, yeah, and then suddenly in a year we haven't got a club. So that's massive for us, and we really do put a lot of focus there.
In terms of my USP on this pod, it's my lack of financial knowledge and acumen. But I think I would know enough to be involved with a club at your level. I'd understand the finances and economics of a club at your level. But as the club gets more successful, I'm not entirely sure that I would have the financial articulacy to vote on things. So do you have to educate fans as well, the bigger you get, about?
Yeah, like I said, we'd never just throw a vote out and people just need to get it. there'll always be time for debate before we actually put a vote out, so that any questions people have got, like you say, if people are less financially literate than others and whatever, then we can have those conversations, we can explain things. We always try to, in the announcements as well, this is the impact, this is what we expect to happen, and blah blah blah, or this is the risk of doing this, and blah blah blah. So people are always informed. I think as we go up, we're well aware of the costs. Our landlords, for example, they've been up and down the divisions a few times. All Sage of Town. We've got a lot of links now in grassroots football just because of being in it. You just create them. So we're well aware of the fact that the further up you go, the more money you need. And I think that's where we as a community, I think people are aware of it. People know. I think the bit that we're maybe not doing as well as we probably could is just getting that 12 months goes fast. I still remember going to pre-season last year and thinking, oh wow, there's some work to do on this squad, and then here we are 12 months later and we've won the double, and it was brilliant, and they had a fantastic season, and we could have won a treble, but we lost in the other cup final. And that 12 months has just flown past. And so I think we sometimes sit there and go, oh, that's a problem for later down the line. Or, we're going to need income in 12 months, or a new income in 12 months, or whatever. And maybe that's something as a community and as a leadership group and as a club generally, that's something that, we do need to get our grip on quicker, because if we do achieve what we want to achieve, and the women's team get promoted and the men's team get promoted, money needs to be found, and we need to diversify our income streams. An area that I personally put a lot of emphasis on is sponsorship. I don't think we've done enough around sponsorship. We've got a couple in, it's helped us, but actually, are we looking for a long-term partner who's going to help us up the leagues, who's got the cash to do it, who's got community funds to do it? We haven't really made many inroads in the grants world. That is an area that I know a lot of clubs use to help them. I mean, in some cases stay afloat, in some cases grow, whatever. But that's an area that we haven't really, got our claws into. So I think we've got opportunities to make sure that we remain sustainable, because we're well aware that subscription income, if we get to like the Northwest Counties Prem or whatever, that won't be enough. Like, we know that. So actually we're now working really hard on finding these new income streams that we're aware of, but we just haven't got into yet.
That idea, George, of the cost of success is a very interesting one, because what frustrates me when you talk to managers further up the pyramid, especially at Championship and Premier League level, is that they forget that they seem to, there's a lot of talk about grassroots football and money trickling down to grassroots football, but even starting a Sunday league team is going to cost you, as we discovered, $6,000 a year. And then as you go up the pyramid, it's costing you a lot more money to get promoted, to provide new facilities, and that money's got to come from somewhere. And that seems to be what everyone forgets when we're talking about distribution deals. And like you say, at your level, you're spending half the time busting a gut trying to find new income streams, and it's almost like you're being punished for being successful.
Yeah, it is a real problem, and I mean, this is me speaking as me, not as NUFAN or AFC Crewe, but for me, the biggest thing that can happen to grassroots football is either multi-sports clubs, right? There are so many clubs around, and everybody's desperate for facilities, good facilities. That means that they're less they're less mobile, essentially, up and down various pyramids in their sport. So for me, like personally, that's one thing, and then the other is like I said, facilities. There just aren't that many facilities that mean that clubs, for example, Crewe, there are tons of clubs in Crewe, really good clubs that are really well run, but they're just limited. They can't go anywhere because there aren't the facilities. for me, that is the biggest crime in grassroots football. I'm talking football specifically, but I know this is the fact for quite a lot of sports. So the way I look at it is everybody just needs to get a little bit less tribal and just realize that actually for the good of the game, it's better to share, essentially. It doesn't mean merge. You can be your own club, whatever. But actually, from a facilities point of view, if you've got a club banging on the door desperate to progress and they can't because of facilities, that for me seems mental that we allow that to happen.
It's something we see so much more of on the continent, George, where you see clubs sharing municipal facilities from the grassroots upwards. The clubs in the highest division share stadia, and that works all the way down through the Italian pyramid. We don't do it, but again, it comes down to that tribalism, that insularity. It's like no, we're Crystal Palace. We don't want Charlton anywhere near us. Even the same as when you're recruiting kids, the turf war that goes on in London, for example, which you support a London club, but the turf war that goes on between London clubs to attract youngsters, it's terrible, and that's the attitude
detrimental. Yeah, it's surely detrimental to the players and by extension to the clubs. Surely it's creating more work for everybody. Work that could be hours that could be put in doing something else that's more productive. And we see it at grassroots level. The tribalism exists, and I get why it exists. It's just that's football sometimes, but I just think when it comes to, as you put it, the price of success, there are so many clubs out there that are set up to be better, and they're not allowed to be for various different reasons. And that for me is one of the biggest issues we've got in grassroots football.
Yeah. And finally, George, you've told us about success on the pitch, and you have mentioned in passing the community work that you're doing. Just tell us a little bit more about your role in the community and what you hope to do. I know you've had successful community days when you've attracted people in, but what do you hope to achieve there?
We've got, we like I said, we run these community days to sort of let people know that AFC Crewe are here, and we're a friendly club, and we want more fans, we want more people to be affiliated with the club. I think our next step into the community is sort of doing more, charity work, charity days, using the players, using obviously Gary's history, his fame, to sort of embed ourselves more in the community. It's something that we're well aware of because we understand that you can't just barge in and go, we're successful now, we're the big club here, and respect us and love us, right? That just doesn't happen. Definitely not a grassroots football. There are people that turn up to All Sager Town, our landlords. They've watched them get promoted. They've watched them have turgid mid-table seasons. They've seen them in relegation scraps, right? And they just turn up every week because they love it, because they feel welcome there, they feel good there, blah blah blah. So for us, that's the next thing, and one of the next things. We're trying to find more ways that we can sort of, I'm going to sound evil here, but I don't want to, get our claws into the community and sort of extend an olive branch to say, oh, we're not just a sort of a fad, we're not just this online social media thing, we're a real club that want to have roots here, and in 10 years we want to have done this and this that have helped the local community, in Crewe, in Alsager, whatever. So that's quite big for us. I think how we communicate.
Sorry, that comes back to your discussion about attracting sponsors as well, because the more you can convince a local community that you are there for good, the more likely you are to get a local community sponsor that wants to follow you on that path.
Yeah, 100%. We're well aware of how it's all interconnected. It's just obviously because most grassroots football clubs are, everybody lives within probably 2 or 3 miles of the club. We're not necessarily like that, so we have sort of different challenges that others might not have. So when we do these community days and things like that, we have to put in extra effort, whereas I imagine a lot of clubs, they can probably run something like that and it wouldn't be too much of an issue because, oh yeah, I'm local and blah blah blah. But we are, I mean, that's a big thing for us. We do want to do more in the community. It doesn't just help from a marketing perspective, but also longer term, as you say, in terms of sponsorships and relationships with the local area.
And have you told the community you're a Tottenham fan yet?
I keep that quiet in the Northwest. Everybody hates us. I don't get it. We're supposedly the most irrelevant big club of all the big clubs, right? So why does everyone hate us? I don't get it.
I'll tell you who doesn't hate you. I'll tell you who doesn't hate you, and that is the hosts of radio phone-ins. They love you. Because 90% of radio phone-ins are Tottenham fans moaning about. And the other 10% of the rest of us going, that sense of entitlement those Tottenham fans have got. I thought watching Tottenham last season was a pleasure. It's the first half of the season, and especially I love seeing Postecoglou trying to change the culture.
People like to complain. That's all it is. People like to complain. I was in a group chat the other night watching the England game, and everybody was moaning, and I was going, "We're winning 1-0, and Pickford has made one save. What are you moaning about? It's the first game of the group. Just enjoy it."
You're that sort of
stressed. Anyway,
you're that sort of annoying friend, are you?
What? I mean, we're winning. Just chill out. If Serbia score, then fine. Well done. But I mean, God, just enjoy it while we're winning.
That's a great way to end the pod. George, thank you so much for talking to us again. I'm hoping that we can make this an annual thing as you progress through the ranks, because it's been really interesting learning from you some of the things that we wrote about hypothetically in our book about West Park Rovers. So you're actually on the same terrible word, but you're on the same journey as we were fictionally. So it's absolutely fascinating to find out what it's like on a practical level. So I'm looking forward to our annual chat, George. So thank you for joining us.
Yes, it's been great. Thanks for having us. And up the Crewe.
There's two things I took from that, Kieran. First of all, this notion that we discussed there that success is very expensive. And as we said, people talk about distributing money down to grassroots football without ever fully realising what they need that money for. And they need it because as soon as they start progressing up the pyramid, it costs a bloody lot of money. But I was also really interested in George, his total honesty there when he said there are still things that they are learning about this ownership model. For example, they haven't got a lot of expertise when it comes to looking for sponsors, when it comes to seeking out FA grants, local regional grants, which all feeds back into the fact that essentially the club is owned by enthusiastic amateurs, doesn't it?
It is. And for anybody that's ever applied for a grant for whatever reason, there is a way of doing it. There is a system, there is an establishment, and if you're not part of it, it can make your job, as somebody who's trying to interact with some of this funding, to be really difficult. And yet you'll see other people just do it, and they get money left, right, and centre. So I do have a lot of sympathy for George, but they do seem to be incredibly well intentioned, and they're certainly moving from strength to strength, and the fact that they've now got a manager who is, I think, if you've got somebody that sets standards in the dressing room, the boardroom will probably take a look and say, right, well, we need to match that as well. And I'm not saying that they hadn't done that previously, but a rising tide lifts all ships, including everybody connected to the club, and they certainly are moving forwards.
Yeah, as we've discussed before, Kieran, there are charities. So it's not just the usual suspect mega charities, but there are charities who have full-time employees simply to try and access grants. So I often wonder why football clubs don't do the same thing, because it's incredibly complicated. There's a huge amount of money available out there through all sorts of grants, but it's incredibly complex to access it. And I'm surprised that clubs and more charities don't take on board people who have the expertise to do that.
Yep. I think that's fair comment. I guess those people are not encouraged to seek new clubs because the people that they're already working for want, I think the technical phase is first dibs at a Danny New grant pot or fund, and therefore say, just do it for us, get us sorted, and we'll worry about other people at a later date.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod as well, that'd be very kind of you, and it will get you access to our chat community and our regular quizzes. And you can do all that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on the pod, you can email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. And don't forget, you can go to the same website if you want to buy our book, and you can follow us on Twitter, X, and YouTube. I don't hand up. I forgot. It's been so long since we, between pods, Kieran, I forgot. I don't hand over for a customary farewell. I just say goodbye on my own. So goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.